Hi there, welcome to Games Over Qualia. My name is Devon. These videos work in 3 different parts. First, you send me your game and you fill out this form about your intended experience. Second, I'll play the game completely blind and then I explain what I think the game was trying to do. Third, I compare my blind experience with your intended experience and we'll see if they align or if they don't. Today's game is called Warlord's Penance, and it is developed by this person here, I think Zizico or something like that. This is the only thing they wanted me to know. I'm to play as the warrior. So knowing that, let's go ahead and play the game. All right, I've just played Warlord's Penance, and these are my first impressions. This game is super different than many games that I've played before. So this game's a dungeon crawler, but it's also kind of an action a rhythm game, sort of. It's not really a rhythm game though. Crypt of the Necrodancer, it's nothing like that. And basically you just have to go and collect keys and then go and unlock doors, and you have to beat enemies in order to collect those keys or beat enemies in order to advance further. The game requires you to use your mouse and click on the specific things that you want to attack or defend against. So in the very beginning battle where you have a person in front of you who's swinging their sword at you, you have to either left click to use your sword, this is as the warrior of course, left click to attack with your sword, or right click to defend with your shield. So when you attack them, they get damaged. When you block, you get damaged a little bit, unless you do a perfect block, meaning like as soon as their attack hits you, then you receive no damage. You can defend while attacking also. So you have 2 little icons that represent your attack and your defense, in this case as the warrior. And when you attack, your icon empties and then it slowly refills to get to your point where you can attack again. And then if you defend, it does the same thing. Your defense has a lot more of have a cooldown period than your attack does. And this is where things get a little strange. For me, I completely did not play this game correctly when I first played it. I played the whole game and I hated it so much. And it was not because of the game, it was because of something that I was doing. So I was specifically only blocking attacks when they were perfect. And I didn't know how to block any other way. And I think there was 2 indicators that were kind of making me feel like what I was doing was the correct way of playing. So I think it was the sound, for one. You get this really big sound when you have a perfect block. You can block with like I said, with your shield or your sword. Whereas if you just block regularly, I don't think you get that kind of sound. So for me, it confirmed that I was doing the right thing. That, and also my health did not go down. I didn't realize this until much later on, that when you block regularly without being perfect, that you still get damaged just a little bit. And that really didn't make any sense to me. I felt like blocking should, avert any damage. So that's why I guess I was pulled toward this perfect kind of block. To only play to where you're only doing perfect blocks all the time is extremely difficult. I'm basically making this way harder for myself than I should be. I looked at this game's page on itch.io and looked at the comments to see if there was anyone who agreed with me in this kind of, I was like, this is kind of insane that this game requires this much expertise. And none of the comments said so. In fact, every single comment that was here was super positive, right? Everyone's like, this is a great game. I can't believe how great this is. It's like a rhythmless kind of rhythm game. And I'm like, what? Nobody? I looked at some of these comments and I went into their gameplay. Like some people had actually put in gameplay of them playing it on YouTube. And I found that a lot of people were doing what I did in the very beginning, which was just spamming attacks, right? They would block before the enemy attacked. They'd block it and then your shield icon stays up there for a little bit, but player would have successfully blocked. And so that made me realize, oh, what I was doing was a very, very specific type of block. Mine was the perfect block versus what you're trying to do, which is you just right click and then your shield icon kind of stays there for a little bit and it fades, and it kind of has this grace period where the enemy attacks and then you successfully block. And you still get damaged, just not very much. And I didn't realize that was the thing. I didn't realize that you still got damaged when you blocked. It was difficult for me to understand that. I think because the sound cue maybe was there, but obviously there was a lot of people that this worked for, this type of game design. And for me, it just did not work. I felt like it wasn't a unreasonable ask to see if I could play this game without getting hurt, or at least, facing one enemy without getting hurt. And it wasn't until that I did that where I understood that what I was doing was the perfect block, that in conjunction with watching those YouTube videos. I like literally tested this out. I did this like 15 times where I would go to this one specific enemy and I'm going to keep fighting him until I could come to a point where I beat him without getting any damage. And I didn't understand what was happening. I kept getting damaged even though I was beating him. So I didn't realize that perfect blocks mean no damage. Regular blocks mean a little damage. I think one of the reasons why there was a lot of people that really vibed with this game, maybe that's a better term. My unk right now. I want to call this game like a Dark Souls kind of game. It's not really a Souls-like, but it is in the sense of design. So Dark Souls feels like you're a third-person fighter game, but it's not really about fighting. It's kind of more slowed down and methodical, and you have to really focus on the animations, as opposed to reaction times. So, I mean, you do have reaction times in there, but it's less, Tekken, less Mortal Kombat, less Super Smash Brothers, and more like chess almost. It feels like a turn-based game, but it's not, right? That's what I mean. If you play that game as an action game, you're not going to do very well. You're going to overreact, right? You're going to react to the wrong types of attacks, and you're going to end up doing attacks that take too long to do at the wrong moments, and you're not going to do very well. And I know this from experience because I am a action-oriented player who plays Dark Souls, and I hate Dark Souls for that reason, because it really demands its own kind of rhythm. So this game, because it is rhythm-oriented, feels similar in that sense, because it has kind of this action framing where you're a first person and you almost come into this kind of turn-based looking type of battle, except it's not turn-based, right? You can just attack whenever you want. But because of these cooldown periods, you kind of have to really understand the rhythm of the person in front of you and how they're going to attack so that you don't get hurt very much. The way that you heal in this game, there's two different ways to heal. There's the vitality points. It's a separate bar from your HP. So you have your HP and then you have your VP, vitality points. And your VP, as long as you have points there, your health will regenerate, basically. But it regenerates very slowly. You still have health potions. Basically, all that does is it refills your health faster. It just makes your health jump up, an increment. I didn't really understand why vitality points were here at all, because, there's so many enemies in the game, and you move relatively fast. When you come to an enemy, it feels like not much time has passed since the last enemy. And so your health hasn't regenerated that much. And so you either kill an enemy and then walk around until you face the next enemy, and then you just stop and wait for your health to regenerate until you finally engage, or you just explore the dungeon, I guess. And there's not really a whole lot to explore because this dungeon isn't that big, because it's a game jam game. It feels like if this game was much more expansive, then that would make a lot more sense to have vitality points and have this kind of, regeneration system. But otherwise, it has this kind of effect to me where I feel like I'm just waiting over and over, and I don't want to do that. So I kept using health potions just basically every time I could. Because this game is a game jam game, it doesn't seem like this game has a whole lot of size to it. Like it's not that expansive. It is really well designed in terms of the navigation. I think the game feels rather big, even though it is relatively small. And I think that's because of the maze-like structure of the level. It really feels quite good to me. The thing I don't like about it, when I'm walking around in this environment, I don't feel like I'm exploring ever, right? I don't ever feel like I'm going into some new place. It feels like I'm kind of just solving a maze, right? It feels like it's a maze crawler. I want to feel progression as I'm going forward. As I get to new spaces, I want to go through a door and see that, oh, I'm in a brand new spot and there's new things here and it looks different, just new objects. Really how I knew that I was going forward was I was getting newer types of enemies. But I wanted to see that in the environment too. I wanted to see just new textures and new things to make me go, oh, wow, this is a new place. So as I said before, Dark Souls feels like a strategy game when you play it, disguised as an action game. And I feel like that's kind of what this game, Warlord's Penance, is doing also. I feel like this game it feels like a strategy game, but it's disguised as an action game. And what I mean by that is because action games require reaction times, whereas strategy games kind of slow down your thought process, and they kind of say, make a choice by exploiting the systems in front of you. So for example, I took some notes here about the gameplay. So this first enemy, the very first enemy that you face, they have this attack time of 1 second. While they're staring at you, they telegraph their attack by holding their sword up, and between that and the actual attack is 1 second. You can attack or you can defend. When you right-click to defend, your cooldown time for that shield to become available again is 3 seconds, and then to attack again is 1.5 seconds. This enemy attacks every 1.5 seconds, more or less. You either make the decision to block with your sword or with your shield. They attack, you use your shield, now you can't use your shield again for another 3 seconds. During that time, the enemy will attack again. So you either defend with your sword during that period, or you just attack them like most people would do and just take the damage. But that kind of feeling, for me, as an action-oriented player, when I see something like that, my goal is to not get hurt. My goal is to deal damage and not get hurt myself. It's not necessarily to deal damage and take damage. That's kind of a turn-based kind of thing, right? That's kind of a, I know this attack is coming, so I'll do this to mitigate, the damage, and we'll have a trade-off of this, right? That's the kind of strategic kind of mindset that someone is taking, usually on a turn-based game or an RTS type of game, some sort of strategy game. But for people who play action games, that's not something that you do. In Tekken, or when you're in Smash Bros, you're typically trying to deal damage and not get hurt at all. And sometimes, maybe getting hurt is unavoidable, but it's not necessarily in that kind of sense where you're thinking transactionally. So when you take that mechanic of, hurting others and not getting hurt yourself, and then you kind of slow it down a whole lot, then this is the type of game that you come to, and this is the type of mindset that you have, where you have to think about these in increments. It's kind of like an RTS game where you have those hotkeys. So really, this feels much more like an RTS game than any kind of action game. And while that completely vibes with apparently everybody in the comments section for this game, it did not vibe for me, and that was immediately apparent to me as soon as I played the game. I wouldn't say that has anything to do with design per se. I mean, the design does feel like an RTS game, especially with that whole, cooldown system looking thing. But it was very difficult for me to understand why my action-oriented mindset wasn't really playing out really well. I ended up doing a very specific type of strategy, and I did beat this game, and I played it a whole lot, but it wasn't because I was playing into a core game loop that I really enjoyed. If you think about a core game loop, about what you're supposed to do within a game, we're being taught a specific type of way to think about the game, and then we'll use that to our advantage, and we'll start developing a skill so that we can avoid mistakes going forward. With a core game loop, something like in Super Mario Bros., if you're going forward and then you see a gap and then you fall into the gap, you die. That's a negative thing. You come back and you restart and you realize, oh, I should avoid those gaps. Okay, so you go forward, and now no matter how big the gap is, you know to avoid it somehow. You know that you should apply the skill of avoiding those specific gaps. And there's many different game loops that you can have, in a game. So the way that I would look at it is trying to avoid mistakes, right? So when you're going into that little gap in Super Mario Bros., that's a mistake because of the feedback that it gives you. If you have this in a fighting game, you go toward an enemy and an enemy hits you, your health bar goes down, and you realize that's a mistake. That's something I should avoid. When you try to apply that kind of action-oriented mindset of avoiding mistakes to Warlord's Penance, you're trying to think of these attacks and defenses in like a strategic kind of way, meaning that when you get hurt, that's not necessarily a mistake. And so I think that's kind of the issue for me, that when I'm playing this game, I feel like in an action-oriented mindset that I'm making mistakes by getting hurt, but that's not really what's happening, right? If you were to think about Pokemon, right, in a turn-based system, it feels very transactional when you're in a system like that, right? It's my turn to attack, I attack you, and now it's your turn to attack, so I have to step aside and just let you do whatever it is that you do, right? If I get hurt, that's fine, that's not a mistake. But in a more, free form, you can attack whenever you want, or you can defend whenever you want. It's during those times that it feels more like a turn-based system, but it's disguised as an action one. That's where my mind kind of fell apart here. The one other thing I wanted to mention was that there was a jump scare in this game, which I really enjoyed, and this is a spoiler for those people, but while you're going in this maze, there's this like little tiny corridor where you can easily turn straight into the corridor, and when you do so, there's 8 or 10 enemies that are just right in front of you immediately, and I love that so much because it's a gameplay-oriented jump scare, meaning that the people who have not played this game and watch a clip like this, that's not scary. But the people who've played the game and they're playing this part, that feels rather scary. So I would say that's very, very well done. in terms of interactive storytelling, I guess you could call it. Other than that, I loved the music. I loved the halftone kind of look of the whole game. I love the graphics. It's very easy to get lost into the aesthetics of things. The aesthetics were just really, really cool. So with that being said, that is my experience with this game. And let's go into the devs' intentions. All right, so these were the devs' intentions. The first question was, what were you hoping that the player would feel while playing your game? They answered, I want the player to feel constantly pressured while feeling engaged with continuous progress, unlocked doors, getting a new ally, getting close to the exit. I wanted the player to feel a slight relief after every enemy encounter that they overcome. We're trying to make it so the game is not unfair, but far from being an easy walk in the park. Question number 2 was, why did you choose this experience? The developer answered, I wanted to try a simple yet engaging combat system. Plus, I love the idea of classic dungeon crawlers, but I think they're too difficult to approach or enjoy because of the stats, complexity, grindy, you need the wiki, etc. And I love old school dark fantasy setting, which once again is reserved for a few games that are not easily approachable. We wanted to make a game that is simple to make, simple to play, and could be expanded all while being approachable. Happy face. Question number 3, I asked, were there specific moments, mechanics, or ideas that you built around that emotional goal? So this was a very detailed answer. They gave it in specific points. The first one was atmosphere. They said visuals. I would love feedback on the visuals. We wanted to go with something that was easy to produce. We're a 2-guys team. We have to make it feasible, all while being good enough to drive players looking for a more serious tone. Second point was sound design. Music that adapts when in combat or when with low health. Sound design that would provide good feedback and a sense of danger while not being horror-like. The next point was the combat system that is easy but kept you on your toes. Another point was adaptive difficulty, like Resident Evil. The game is engaging for beginners, but also for experienced players. And the last one was what's next? For the extended commercial release, we're planning to add more content, dungeons, levels, equipment such as better swords, shields, bows, and a simple skill tree. These wouldn't be super complex, just to provide a more streamlined sense of progression. Let me know your thoughts. Wow, 2 people working on this game. That's pretty crazy. The game is really well done. I thought it was tremendous in terms of the amount that you did in the short amount of time that you did it. It's pretty fluid, right? I was able to move through the game without thinking that any of it was pushing against me in any way, other than the concept, which some would argue is the most important part of the game. But again, that's just me for someone who has an action-oriented mindset. And so I'm probably not your intended audience. So take my experience with a grain of salt, because I'm probably not the type of person that you're looking for. But with that being said, I appreciate all kinds of the art that went into this. It's really cool that you guys have made a game that, again, has this kind of 1-bit kind of halftone art style, and yet everything is very easy to identify. I think that's one of my main gripes about, even colorful games. We talked about that one game, Stella Incus, some time ago, and that game is very, very colorful, and you can see from the screenshot here that everything is fighting for your attention all at once. There were some other games that I talked about prior, but it's a testament to your design skills that I think everything that you see in this game, in Warlord's Penance, is easily identifiable. It definitely felt approachable, and it definitely felt simple to play. It did not feel fun to me, but that's just me. Again, like I said, my action-oriented mindset. But I thought the sound design was really well done, except there was a couple things that I think could have been better. I almost never knew when I was getting hurt. I know that as far as I remember, I think the screen shakes, and I think there is a sound. There's just a small sound, but that, mixed with all the other sounds that are happening, and the music and stuff like that, it doesn't feel like I understand when I got hurt. I feel like I need more something, some more juice in there, because I was always surprised whenever I died, right? Whenever it says you died, and I'm like, wait, I'm out of health already? Like that came as a surprise. One thing also that came as a surprise was getting hurt while I was blocking. I didn't realize that blocking just softens the blow. When you first face off on a first enemy, everything is listed on the top right, about what to do, and that's kind of like your tutorial. And while that's fine, it's a simple enough game to kind of catch on about what it is that you're supposed to do. I think it's really easy to learn the wrong way, as I did, right? The data is against me at this point, but I do believe that's probably what would happen with other people were this a wide release, right? If there was a lot of people that were playing this game just for the heck of it, just to see what it was about, I think there's some people that could get lost in that first tutorial kind of area where you're fighting off against an enemy and they don't know that it's a kind of a transactional thing where they're supposed to get hurt, right? No matter what, you're going to get hurt, basically, unless you perfectly block every single time. If you had a sound for low health, I don't remember hearing it. Other than that, I think your sound design is in the right place. The perfect block, right? You can see exactly when that happens. You know that when enemies come in, that they materialize in like it's a new thing that happens. They don't just pop into existence. There's times that sometimes when the enemies can be on top of each other, right? Where if there's a lot of enemies on screen all at once, and it can be difficult to know who's hitting you at what moment and how to attack that specific person. I died a lot of times, but I never quite felt like it was the game's fault. I just kind of felt like I didn't know how to play it well. So I would say that's a good testament to design. My personal involvement in the game was not fun. I think this comes down to understanding the system and how that system plays out. I mean, there's probably other people out there. I can't be the only person who doesn't like Dark Souls, but I keep drawing the similarities between this game and Dark Souls because on the surface, it feels like this should be an action game, but it's absolutely not. I'm feeling like the game isn't responding the way that I think it should be. But I think that comes down to teaching. I think what you could do, and I've talked about this in my very early days of this channel, if you're trying to cast a wide net, if you're trying to reach players like me, then I think what you could do is teach the player basically how to think about your game. And the way that you would do that is not just by a simple tutorial like that, but to basically point out to the player when specific things are happening so that when they play the game, they're not automatically filling in blanks, right? So like I said, this is very much a play test kind of thing. It would be really nice to see their gameplay. In fact, someone in my Discord had mentioned that the types of feedback that is invaluable is the beginning gameplay, right? Someone who plays their game for the first time, and you see what it was that they're doing in that gameplay. And you're seeing, oh, it looks like they were messed up here. It looks like they're messed up here or whatever. And what typically happens with playtesting is when someone agrees to playtest your game and they start playing it, they'll get over hurdles, right? They'll see some sort of conflict within the gameplay. They're facing some kind of friction because they don't understand, but they'll keep playing and just kind of teach themselves, right, as they play so that they can get into the meat of the game. I do this all the time, right? Whenever I play a game that comes in that's submitted to me and I typically just don't enjoy my experience immediately, I'll just keep playing the game until I get into the rhythm of things. And this happens a lot because not a lot of games that are submitted to me are my jam, right? It doesn't really matter because I analyze them all the same. But if you're casting a wide net and you're trying to sell this game like as a game for anybody, then those people can get very, very picky, right? Because no one is going to get over that initial hump. No one's going to give your game the benefit of the doubt and just continue playing. It's an immediate refund. They don't care. They're not going to be nice and just keep playing the game and hope that it turns out well. This is why even when you're playtesting, that you should ask for, recorded game footage for their first time playing, specifically their first time. If they record like their gameplay, like their second attempt or their third attempt, even that can be a bit much because they might have had initial conflicts that they just forgot about, that they may not have talked about whatsoever. I have a podcast, by the way, Games Over Qualia Talk, GOQ Talk. There's a link to it in the description if you'd like. So that's everything that I have to say for Ziziko. Thank you so much for submitting Warlord's Penance. If you're not this developer and you want to submit your game to me, you can, except I'm already filled up for the year, so I may not get to those games. There's a wait list if you want to. There's a link in the description to submit that game. Or you can check out the Discord. There's also a link in the description for the Discord. There's all kinds of developers there, and you can even put your game into there for playtesting. There's some people that like playtesting games in that area, and I'm there too. Thank you so much for those who are watching. Thank you to my Patreon members right here. You guys are awesome. And I will talk to you guys another time. Later. Oh, by the way, I have coffee. Look at this. Coffee in my Games Over Qualia. Games Over coffee. Yeah. Anyway, thank you. Bye.